My name is Folsum. I'm from Upper Chichester, Pennsylvania. I have been in my home for almost 50 years. My husband and I, we've raised 5 children. We have 14 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren, so I still have children very active in the school district in the state of Pennsylvania. And my husband is not well. He's got vascular dementia. I believe that one of the worst things that we can do is take him from our home. Get him first on our house 6 years ago when we found out that he was sick. And that money's almost gone. We have just about 3 years left of that money. That money's been put away for sale or for school tax. And I don't know what we'll do. When that money's gone, we'll have to leave our home, and I just don't know what's going to happen.
Good evening. My name is Tammy and we are at the Millmont Park Fire Company in Folsum, PA. We the people are speaking. We have a bill, SB 76, Senate Bill 76, that's being held hostage in the Senate Appropriations Committee. We want that bill released. We want to own our properties, and tonight we're going to educate this district.
One of the leaders of the Pennsylvania Coalition of Taxpayers Association, the parent group that is made up of 85 separate subgroups across the state working to make this happen. Mr. David Balding.
And I am a volunteer taxpayer activist. This effort has been my full-time job since 2004, full-time unpaid job. Tonight I'm representing the Pennsylvania Coalition of Taxpayer Associations. We are 84 nonpartisan grassroots groups who are all working together in unison to have the bill enacted that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. Let's start you off with a few numbers. They mean anything to you? $27 billion. The current total cost of K-12 education in Pennsylvania. The historical average annual rate of increase is 6.25%. If you use that as a constant and extend it out to 10 years, you'll find that the total cost of education in Pennsylvania is going to balloon to $53 billion in 10 years from now. The uncontrolled increases in property taxes are fueling most of that, and we have to find a way to get this under control. There's another number for you. I assume you're all here tonight because you have issues with your property tax. Is that about right? What's going to happen in the next 5 years, the next 3 years, if your school property tax bill goes up by 30%?
I'm leaving.
It's entirely impossible. How many of you are familiar with the pension spike? So what's going on with that? We're looking at public employee pensions in Pennsylvania going up right now. It's in the hole by almost $50 billion.
I guess so.
And a lot of that is being pushed down to the local school districts to fund. And they fund it through increases in property taxes. That 30% is the amount you can see your school property tax rise over the next 3 to 5 years. It's going to devastate our state and the school districts as well. And finally, another number. To give you a clue about that. This is the Reading Eagle from August. Besides the Reading Eagle, I have Times Tribune from Scranton, another one from Dauphin County. They all look the same. See what it says at the top? Tax sale. This is not foreclosures. This comes out once a year in Berks County. There are over 1,200 homes on this particular sheet, this page, this board here, that are up for sale for non-payment of property taxes. 10,000 is the number of homes we estimate are lost to school property taxes each year to sheriff sales. And that doesn't include those who sell their homes, sometimes at a loss, just to avoid being sheriffed and losing their equity. It also doesn't include those who are foreclosed. There is an issue here with foreclosures. There are some areas of the state where the monthly school property tax escrow can equal the mortgage payment. Now, people have said to me, well, folks have bought too much house and they can't afford it, that's their problem. Okay, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But the point is, every time a home is foreclosed, it reduces the value of the homes in that neighborhood, it hurts the local economy, and you've got to stop the foreclosure. Right now, As of October 17th, according to foreclosure.com, 27,587 homes in Delaware County are in one stage of foreclosure or another. 27,000!
Wow.
And how many of those could be saved just by the elimination of the monthly school property tax escrow? So what we're going to talk about tonight is not so much about the property taxes. They're only the symptom of a much greater problem. And if you're going to fix it, we've heard all about the property tax relief, the property tax reform. If you're going to fix it, you've got to fix the funding system. Here's the first myth. Property taxes are the problem. They're not. Here's the problem. First of all, property taxes are an antiquated taxation system that began in the Middle Ages, when landowners paid for their government. The serfs didn't have any money, so the landowners were paid. We brought that into Pennsylvania, into the United States, in the early 1700s, and in Pennsylvania in the early 1800s, at a time when we were an agrarian society. And at that time, it kind of made sense, because people earned their living from the land. And you could assume that a farmer who was farming 40 acres was earning more than one who was farming 10 acres. And you could charge him accordingly, and probably pretty well hit his income, because there was no other income reporting. Now, we live in our homes. They don't generate income. Why do we still treat homes as if they're generators of income and tax people on the value of money that they don't really have, just the value of their home? Property taxes are inherently arbitrary and unfair. When was the last time Delaware County has been reassessed? Anyone know? How many years ago? The bad thing about reassessments is they're out of date almost as soon as they're completed. And they're subjective to begin with. The only true value of a home is what is agreed to between a willing buyer and a willing seller. Not an assessor walking out and saying, okay, this house is worth $100,000, this house is worth $200,000. How do you know that? And we saw ourselves in Berks County last time we were assessed, which was 1987. We live in a cookie cutter development. All the homes are about the same size, the properties are about the same size, but yet during this reassessment, and the house at that time was only 4 years old, during this reassessment, our house was assessed for $20,000 more than the house right next to it for a virtually identical house. We appealed it and had some knocked off the reassessment, but the point of this is, why should we have even had to do that? Why was the assessment fair in any manner whatsoever? The other problem is the ability of people to pay property tax bills and the loss of homes. I just gave you some numbers on that. I always pay my school property tax bill on the very last day of the rebate period. Our property tax, our tax collector is very friendly toward what we're trying to do, and she likes to give me a lot of information. She told me this year more people than ever had asked for the payment plan as opposed to paying the taxes. More people had paid late this year, and people have complained about having to take out second mortgages or reverse home equity loans just to be able to pay their property taxes. And this just doesn't affect seniors, it affects all homeowners, and they're struggling to get it done.
Hi, my name is Lou Zamuda. I was born and raised in Ridley Township. I now am a landlord in Ridley Park, Ridley Township. I'm here tonight because of the school tax issue. When I calculated all of our school taxes up recently, it comes to just shy of $40,000 in school taxes that we're paying. The real estate business in general used to be somewhat profitable if you worked hard, if you did what you were supposed to do, and at this point in time it's extremely difficult to make ends meet. By the time you are done paying the over-bloated taxes, especially the school tax, there's very little left for us. It's almost impossible to raise the rents because the rents are not able to be raised with the cost of living.
Out of control spending is part of the problem. I don't like to beat up on school districts or school boards. I think for the most part it's a thankless job. But there are still those on school boards with agendas, and I'm always struck by this during school board elections in Berks County, because the Reading newspaper publishes a list of candidates and a few statements about them, and I'm always struck by the fact that a lot of candidates either are retired administrators or the spouse of a teacher in another district, or somehow related to the education system. And the worst of all are the helicopter parents. They drive me crazy. These are the ones who get elected to a school board to make sure that their children get exactly what they want them to get. No lie. We had a woman in our school board who absolutely demanded that the board start ballet classes in our school district because her daughter wanted to learn ballet. Now, yeah, it's amusing, but it shows the abuses the system has fostered on us as the taxpayers just because the school boards have the ability to raise taxes at will. Lack of effective education cost control. Supposedly, in 2006, when Act 1 was enacted, we were going to put education cost controls in place, and school boards would not be allowed to increase their property taxes any more than a state-mandated maximum each year based on the increase in the cost of living. This year was 2.7%, except 140 districts went to the Pennsylvania Department of Education and said, we need more money, and here's the reason, and PDE rubber stamped the request. We had one school district in particular had a 10% property tax increase this year, even though they were supposed to abide by the Act 1 limits. Act 1 doesn't work, period. It was never designed to work, and in this case, the ability to raise taxes is still unlimited. Education and taxation inequities. The taxation inequities are terrible, and it's due basically to the 1991 funding formula for the money that's distributed from the state to school districts. That funding formula held harmless all school districts, and what that means is all districts will get the same relative amount of money forever, regardless of increases or decreases in student population. And to show you how this demonstrates the disparities, the Berkeley School District in Columbia County has lost over 1,000 students in the past 10 years. At the same time, they've hired 40 new teachers. Roughly 35% of their budget is paid through local property taxes because they're still getting the same amount of money even though they have 1,000 fewer students. The flip side of that is York Suburban School District in York County. They've had a large influx of students over the past 10 years. 88% of their school budget is paid through local property taxes, 12% by the state. Now, in what way is that fair? That one school district, 35% of the budget is paid by property taxes, 88% in another school district. And the projected cost of education that I already talked about. Keep this chart in mind, not necessarily the numbers on it, but I'm going to come back to it later when we talk about actual numbers. So just keep the rough idea of it in mind. This is the increase in property taxes, the black line, the increase in the Pennsylvania average weekly wage, the green dotted line, and the increase in inflation, the red line, over the past 20 years, from 1993 to 2013. Property taxes during that time have risen 146%, while the average weekly wage, which is a direct reflection of a person's ability to pay the tax, has only gone up by 80%, and inflation by 59%. Go back to the early years of this chart. And this chart, by the way, comes from a study done of our legislation by the Pennsylvania Independent Fiscal Office. They are the equivalent of the federal budget office on the federal level. In this study, they did this chart, look back in the early years. The property tax, the average weekly wage, and inflation were pretty much in sync with one another. But what has happened over the past 10 or 12 years? What's worse, with the pension spike, the increase in that black line is only going to accelerate. And that gap's going to get wider. And every time that gap gets wider, more people can't pay the taxes and they lose their homes.
That's right.
We have got to do something about flattening that black line, and I'll get to that when we get to the numbers. There's a short answer to the problem. We have irreparably broken K-12 public education finances. Period. Myth number 2. Property tax relief or property tax reform is the solution. How many of you are sick of hearing those words? Let's look at property tax relief. Short history of it. Act 50, Act 72, Act 1. They're all different flavors of the same concept. The idea was for local school boards to have the ability to shift from property taxes to a local earned income tax. Act 50 and Act 72 were left at the discretion of the local school boards, and almost no school boards opted to do it. Act 1, Governor Rendell's brainchild in 2006, allowed a voter referendum on it, and didn't allow, mandated a voter referendum in each school district in the state on whether or not they wanted to shift partially to a local earned income tax. 498 school districts of 501 at that time were eligible for the vote. 494 turned it down. And still, our General Assembly keeps insisting that property tax relief and local tax shifting is the way to get it done. And it just doesn't work. House Bill 1600, with another flavor of this, that came along in 2008, where a representative from the 39th District in Allegheny County said he wanted to increase the sales tax by 0.5 point, the income tax by 1/4 point, and give you about a $400 rebate. Okay, fine. You get the $400 rebate, but what happens to the property taxes in the meantime? They keep going up. And eventually you're right back where you were before, only with 2 new taxes to pay. The people, and Governor Rendell, after the vote on Act 1, said the people were stupid for not going along with it. No, they were smart enough to understand that at best, it was temporary relief that eventually was going to be outstripped by rising property taxes. And don't get me started on the relief from gambling revenue. I don't know how you guys are doing here. In my school district, for my particular circumstances, my school property tax bill alone is $4,500 a year. We got $116. Thank you very much. My property taxes went up by more than that just this year. So thank you. That doesn't work either. But we hear all about property tax, local property tax shifting for relief. No. HB 1189 was introduced this year in the House of Representatives. It called for local tax shifting either from property tax to an earned income tax, a business privilege tax, or a gross receipts tax on businesses. Now think about that one for a second. First of all, this was unsuccessful previously, and this bill, by the way, was introduced for one reason, and that was to try to draw attention from our bill and try to kill it, and still give the lawmakers the opportunity to say during an election, look, we gave you property tax relief, but only if the school boards do it. But consider the circumstances here. Suppose the school board would decide to do it and impose an earned income tax and a gross receipts tax in businesses. First of all, the gross receipts tax is paid on just that, gross receipts, whether or not the business is profitable. So the merchant pays the gross receipts tax on the front end, and if they're a small business, they pay the increase in the income tax on the back end. And you whack the merchants twice. If you were a business in that school district, would you stay there? Or would you get out and go someplace else? The relief, any relief, is quickly outstripped by relentlessly rising school property taxes. If you don't do something about the increase in property taxes, any kind of relief isn't going to work. It's doomed to failure if you don't restructure the system. These are our 3 R's. No relief, no reform, no reductions. Eliminate the school property tax. Replace it and get this monkey off our backs.
My name is Richard Sterling. I'm 74 years old. I moved into my home in Folsum in 1962, right out of school. At that time, my payments for my house with taxes was $122 a month. Since that 50+ years, they've slowly creeped up to the time that I've had to put my house up for sale now. Beautiful home. It's ideal. And I can't even get a buyer because of the taxes in the town.
No wonder he looks like that. For 30 years, he's been sitting there for property tax reform. And for 30 years, we've been hearing the same whiny excuses. Oh, it's too difficult. It's too difficult to get an agreement. People aren't going to stand for this kind of massive tax shift. I'm sorry. Do the job you were elected to do. Ignore the special interests, ignore the partisan politics, and do what is right for the people of Pennsylvania. First of all, rising homeowner discontent, we've seen it across the state, and the General Assembly is well aware of homeowners being upset with property taxes. And they try to say, oh, it's not that big a deal. Nonsense. It most certainly is. It's killing the housing market in Pennsylvania. It's killing current homeowners. Property taxes cannot continue at this level. The Act 50, Act 72, and Act 1 failures, especially with relief from gambling, just have proven more to the homeowners that the state is incapable of getting this done. It's got to be changed now. And our 84 taxpayers groups have been applying the pressure, and the General Assembly is very aware of what we've been doing, and they don't like it, and I don't care. Live with it and do what's right. And finally, a diminishing opportunity to fund property tax replacement from a state-level source. Let me give you an example of that. This bill has its genesis in a bill that was originally introduced by Representative Sam Rohrer back in 2004. At that time, we were looking at replacing $8 billion in school property taxes, and Sam's original plan called for applying the sales tax to absolutely everything, but reducing the rate to 4%. That would have completely eliminated the $8 billion in school property taxes. Now for the plan we're talking about using the sales tax and the income tax, because it's no longer $8 billion, it's $12.7 billion. And as long as property taxes keep rising, we're going to get to the point where we're not going to be able to find the funding at the state source to eliminate it. We've got to get this done now, not just for this reason, but because of the pressure that's being put on homeowners. We've got to get it done immediately. July 2014, Arizona State University job growth ranking for Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was rated 36 of 50 states for job growth with a growth rate of 1.19%. Arizona State University periodically updates this. This is the latest one available. Keep that in mind, because I'm going to get to that in a minute as to why these numbers are important. Tax Foundation has a publication called Location Matters, a comparative analysis of state tax costs on business. Report for Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has been rated 49th of 50 for new firms, 50th of 50 for mature established firms. What does that tell you? Businesses don't want to locate in Pennsylvania. Our corporate net income tax is 9.9%. At least that's a fixed number, even though it's the highest in the country, but it's the property taxes. Who wants to locate here being unsure of what their property tax load is going to be from year to year? Bottom line, runaway property taxes are destroying Pennsylvania's economy, devastating job-producing small businesses, and driving away its residents. And I'm going to give you an example. Anybody here know what a KOZ is? Keystone Opportunity Zone. Targeted tax abatement to attract businesses to Pennsylvania. The one that I am most familiar with is Cabela's in Hamburg. They were given a 10-year property tax abatement to come to Pennsylvania. They ran to us and opened up a business. There's been a lot of development around them. It has been absolutely spectacular for them. Now, on the other hand, you had EA Games, who are located in Chester County. That was 15 years ago. We were given a 10-year abatement. And to the day the abatement ran out, EA took off. Point of it is, we know that tax abatements work to attract businesses to Pennsylvania. Why not make the entire state a Keystone Opportunity Zone, welcome businesses to this state, so they bring the jobs that they create? If you're going to let the politicians pick and choose who gets these tax breaks, get rid of it and welcome businesses to Pennsylvania.
Yes.